CeeDee Lamb, with those 5 receptions, now has 536 receptions in his career with the Cowboys. He was tied with Dez Bryant at 531. So now he's in third place all time by himself. Welcome to Just the Stats NFL Top 10's for Wednesday. All right. We got a lot to do today and tomorrow before we have football again on Thursday night. Today we'll wrap up 2 games that I didn't cover yesterday or Monday. And then we'll look at top 10 teams after week 11. Been a little bit of a shakeup in that area, but it'll be fun to check it out, see what we've got going on. Tomorrow, I'm looking forward to looking at the standings and looking at the playoff picture. We are now going into week 12, and a lot of teams, there's been teams playing 11 games already. They will have played 12. And so we're getting down there. I mean, we're almost 2/3 of the way through the season. So, it's getting down to crunch time for a lot of teams, and a lot of the games will become more and more important. A lot of divisional games this last quarter or third of the season. So we're going to see some shakeups going on in different divisions of the NFL. So take a look at back to today. We'll finish up a couple of games. We'll look at the top 10 teams, and then we'll start taking a look at some of our seasonal leaders, see who are candidates for MVP. I just heard a stat, somewhat irritating. They were listing the chances, the odds, I guess it would be, for MVP for this season. And they listed 5. They just listed 5 quick. They didn't spend a lot of time on it, but it was 5 quarterbacks. I mean, Jonathan Taylor wasn't mentioned at all. That's surprising. I mean, I tell you, when Saquon Barkley last year had over 2,000 yards, and even more when you throw in all the scrimmage yards, wasn't even really in the contest. It came down to Jackson and Allen, with Allen winning. And but their seasons, I didn't think were any better, really, than the season that Saquon Barkley put up. But they're quarterbacks, and that just seems to be the way it goes. But anyway, let's get back to our topics for today, and we'll start with the 2 games that we left off with. The first one was the Detroit Lions at the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, this game really was a tough game for the Detroit. Detroit, I haven't had much faith in. I've been trying to put them in my top 10, and I put them in there, and then they proceed to lose. And it really wasn't pretty, honestly, to see. Now, in this game, I'm bringing it up real quick. I thought I had it, and I didn't, so now I'm bringing it up. All right, so Detroit loses this game 16-9. The Eagles just continue to win. They're 8-2, and they don't win pretty, but they continue to win. So, that's that's them. And I mean, wow. And they did a number on Jared Goff. The Eagles defense did. I mean, actually Jalen Hurts was no more impressive, but Jared Goff, 14 for 37. I mean, wow. That's well under 50% for 255 yards, though. 14 completions, 255 yards. That's some big plays. 1 touchdown, 1 interception. They're just on him the whole time. Now, for the Eagles, Jalen Hurts, he only had 14 completions on 28 attempts. So that's 50% exactly. Only threw for 135 yards, though. No touchdowns, no interceptions. Barkley was definitely Barkley, 26 carries for 83 yards. So, yard-wise, not too impressive. I mean, yards per carry, but the fact that the Eagles said, we're going to run this ball, and they did, that's impressive. Now, for Detroit, This was where Jamar Gibbs, and we'll talk about him in a second, but he was 5 catches for 107 yards coming out of the backfield. Jamison Williams, 4 catches for 88 yards. So those are your top 2 players by quite a bit. Now, the sad thing here is Amon-Ra St. Brown, 2 catches for 42 yards, only 2 receptions, but he was targeted 12 times. There's a problem there. 12 targets and only 2 catches. So in this game, like I said, the Eagles continue to win, continue to dominate in the NFC. Now, in this game, we did have Jahmyr Gibbs come out on top now this season as far as running backs go, with the most yards receiving by a running back so far this season. He had 107 yards, beat out Bijan Robinson, who in week 4 had 106 yards. So beat him by 1 yard, but he's at the top of the list now in the top 10 players as far as receiving yards in a single game by running backs. So it was a good game for him. I mean, had 107 yards. Rushing, he only had 39 yards. So he had a total of 146 yards. I mean, 12 carries for 36 yards. So, a little over 3 yards a carry. He just didn't run the ball much. I mean, David Montgomery had 6 carries for 27 yards. So he had over 4 yards. Now, why they didn't run it as much as they could have is beyond me, because this is how they win games, when they run the ball. I don't know. This was really, in some ways, just not a good game for Detroit. Decision-making, the fact that the Lions went for it on 4th down 5 times, didn't make it. I mean, you're talking about a fact that they lost the game by 7 points. Out of those 5 times, they kicked 3 field goals out of 5. There's 9 points. They win this game 18-16. Very questionable in some of them, some of the decisions there. And I know, the coach loves to go for it on 4th down, but at some point you have to say, let's take our 3 points and we'll worry about going for it on 4th down at another time. Now, in this game, Jahmyr Gibbs as well, even though he only had even though he only had 39 yards, it was good enough, really, to bump him from number 10 all-time in Detroit Lions rushing yards category for a career, from 10th all the way up to 7th. He passed the likes of Kevin Jones, who played in 2004 to 2007, Al Farr, who played from 1967 to 1973, and then going all the way back to Ace Gakowski, who played from 1932 to 1938. I believe that's probably the oldest person I've seen on the list as far as still on the top 10 list in rushing. This was way back in 30s when he was on the team. I mean, no one else is even anywhere near that. But now Jahmyr Gibbs, with his 39 yards, now has 3,089 rushing yards. Good enough to now be in 7th place all time. Now, whether he can make it any farther than that, next up from him is James Jones, who played in the 80s with over 3,400 yards. So he needs almost 400 yards the rest of the season to catch James Jones. We'll see if that happens or not. The great Barry Sanders is number 1 on this team with over 15,000 yards. So long way for Gibbs to go, as great as Gibbs is. All right, another stat in this game for the Eagles. Now, Jalen Hurts, no passing touchdowns, but rushing, he did have a touchdown. He carried the ball 10 times for 31 yards. He had 1 touchdown. Now, for the Eagles career-wise, in the all-touchdown categories, he's number 8 all-time with now 61. He's actually tied for 7th now. He was in 8th. He's tied Mike Quick, who played in the 80s. They both now have 61 touchdowns for the Eagles. Next up for him is Timmy Brown, who played in the 60s. He had 62. And if he happened to get 2 in a game, which is very possible for Jalen Hurts with the tush push, he could actually move up as high as 5th. So he's on his way to probably ultimately being number 1 in this category, which is held right now by Harold Carmichael played from 71 to 83. He's got 79. So Hurts needs 18 more. Obviously, he won't do it this season, but he can make a big dent and maybe catch him the end of next season. If not, give it 2 more seasons and he's got this record, I believe. All right. Now, let's move on to the Dallas Cowboy game. This game, Dallas Cowboys really needed to win if they had any thought of making the playoffs. They've got a game against the Chiefs coming up on, I believe, Thanksgiving. That's going to be huge for them. And if they can win that game, well, that'd be impressive in a couple of ways. One being they probably knocked the Chiefs out of playoff contention at all. But that's down the road. But in this game, Dallas Cowboys beat the Las Vegas Raiders pretty handily, 33-16. And all their stars shined in this game. Dak Prescott had a good game, 25 for 33 for 268 yards and 4 touchdown passes. No interceptions, only sacked once. Javonte Williams, as far as running goes, 22 for 93. That's a good game as well, over 4 yards a carry. And then the receivers, George Pickens, 9 catches, 144 yards, and a touchdown. That was on 11 targets. He was the most targeted player on the team, even more than CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb, though, had 5 catches for 66 yards and a touchdown as well. Jake Ferguson, their tight end, who's been slipping in the numbers with CeeDee Lamb being out, had 4 catches for only 16 yards, but 1 was a touchdown. So those are some good numbers. Now, CeeDee Lamb, with those 5 receptions, now has 536 receptions in his career with the Cowboys. He was tied with Dez Bryant at 531. So now he's in 3rd place all time by himself. Pretty good numbers there. But number 2 all time, Michael Irvin, played from 88 to 99. He's got 750. So he's over 200 away from him. He'd have to really rack up some good numbers the rest of this season to put him within reach, possibly next year, of Michael Irvin. Tight end Jason Witten. One of those teams with a tight end is the number 1 receiver with most receptions. He's got 1,215. So the long way. CeeDee Lamb's not even halfway to catching him. Now that is a look at all the 2 games that we had left. Like I said, Dallas Cowboys 4-5 now. They really needed that win. And with their improvement on defense, and they've already got a good offense, they've got a chance. And we'll talk more about that tomorrow when we look at the standings and see how that looks as far as they're standing in their division, but also in their chances to make the playoffs. All right, let's shift over to top 10 teams after week 11. Now, week 10, I had the Eagles as number 1 team, and I left them that way. They beat the Detroit Lions, a good team, despite their 6-4 record. And with that loss, by the way, Lions dropped out of playoffs right now if it was to happen today. But Philadelphia Eagles are now 8-2. I left them at number 1, and I left Denver Broncos at number 2. They're 9-2. They beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And I tell you what, Kansas City Chiefs 5-5. I talk about this all the time. But you listen to some of these people, and I said this last week, but I'll just keep saying it. But right now, the Kansas City Chiefs aren't in the playoffs, but there's talk as if they just can get in there, they'll win this whole thing again. They've lost 5 times. They lost the Denver Broncos. So I think if they're so great, then the Denver Broncos should be up here near the top, and they're 9-2. Now, the Rams and the Seattle Seahawks played. The Rams pulled it out, so I put them at number 3. They're 8-2. I had Seattle above them, but I dropped them below, obviously, because the Rams beat them. Though it was a very tight game. And despite the fact that Sam Darnold for the Seahawks threw 4 interceptions, the Seahawks had a chance to win the game at the end of the game. They just missed a very long field goal. I think it was like 60 yards or so. They would have won the game despite the 4 interceptions, but they didn't. So I've got the Rams at number 3. And I've got the New England Patriots at number 4. They just continue to win. Now, they didn't play a really tough team, but they're still 9-2. So you have to give it to them. You're 9-2. You deserve to be up here in the top 5, or so. Now, I looked at some of these. Some of them have like the Rams at number 1, and I can see that. They're a very good team. And I can see why the Eagles might not be number 1. But despite the fact that they win ugly, that's what's hurting them. And the Rams do look better on offense. But I'm still got Eagles 1. Another one, I mentioned that because I've looked at some of these, the Colts are number 1. I did have them number 1 until they lost. And then they lost to the Chiefs. So they're 8-2. I got them at number 5 right now. They were on a bye week. 8-2. Now I dropped the Seattle Seahawks to number 6. They're 7-3. I didn't drop them that far, about 3 spots, because they did lose to one of the best teams in the NFL, the Rams. And I think the Seahawks are there too. Darnold had a bad game, and there's talk of him reverting to the old Sam Darnold, but every quarterback has a bad game. And if this is his bad game and he got all those interceptions out in one game, he can come back and have, good games after this. But they're 7-3, Seattle Seahawks. I put them at number 6. They've got some tough games coming up as well. So we'll see how that goes for them. But, these standings are going to be very interesting the way they're going right now. With some of these big games that are coming up in the near future. Like, for example, the Indianapolis Colts play the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm sorry, they play them this week. That's a huge game for the Colts, and more so for the Kansas City Chiefs. If they're going to have any chance of staying in the playoffs, the Chiefs need to win this. And the game is in Kansas City, so there's a good chance there. Tampa Bay Buccaneers play the Chargers, and I'll get to that in a minute. I'm kind of rambling here a little bit. I got distracted by that phone call. Sorry about that. But I have number 7, Chicago Bears. They're number 7. They're 7-3. They just keep winning one way or another. It's amazing. Now, can they continue to do that? They have a big game against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Chicago. Steelers defense is really starting to tighten up, and they need to if they're going to stay in this playoff hunt. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers are just hanging on by a thread over the Baltimore Ravens, and we'll see what happens there. And we'll see what we got to have to look up and see what the situation is with Rodgers, if he's going to play for the Steelers or not. But the Steelers need to win that game to stay in first place, and the Chicago Bears just need to win it to prove that they're number 1 in their division. That division's flip-flopped quite a bit. Now, number 8, Buffalo Bills, back into the top 10. They beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That to me was their first impressive win. They did beat the Kansas City Chiefs. That's who I was referring to, which was a good win, but they beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's a big win for them, I think. Despite the fact Tampa Bay's offense has really been hurting, they need to get some players back, and that should make a difference for them. But Buffalo Bills, number 8 right now. Number 9, San Francisco 49ers. They jump back into the top 10. They're 7-4. There's been some changes here as we're getting close. It always is hard to get these bottom few spots as far as the top 10 goes. But I have the San Francisco 49ers at 7-4. And I do that primarily because they have beaten the teams in their division. So despite the fact that they have they have 4 losses, they have beaten the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Cardinals. So those wins over the Rams and Seahawks, even though they were early in the season, still shows they have a good team. And they're getting healthy too. So they could be a tough team. Now, number 10, I dropped them all the way to number 10, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 6-4. Boy, they have had a rough time, and it's not going to get any easier. They have another tough game this week. They just have had a row of very tough games, and so far they haven't been able to win them. I mean, they lost to the Bills and they lost to the Patriots. So we'll see if they can come back and win a game, but they need help. Maybe Bucky Irving is playing this week. That'd be a big help for them. All right, so that rounds out the top 10 that's so far this season. Really interesting to see how long the Eagles can hang on to that number one spot. All right, let's look at some season leaders. We'll start with the quarterbacks. And Drake May right now leads the NFL in passing yards with 2,836. He's got a fair lead over Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert, wow, he had a very bad game. He went in this game second, and he stayed in second. Unbelievably, he stayed in second, and that's because Daniel Jones didn't play for the Colts. He was on a bye week. He's third right now. He dropped to third, and that's simply because Justin Herbert, who was in second with 2,610 yards, ended the week with 2,691. Only had 81 yards against the Jaguars passing, 81. That was in the first half. In the second half, he had 0. And they even pulled him out of the game in the third quarter. It was a bad game for Herbert, but he's still up there at number 2. Now, there will be some changes when Drake May finally and the Patriots get a bye week. But right now, he is number 1. Big Josh Allen jumped into the top 10. He's number 9 now with 2,456 yards. But the rest of the top 10 stayed basically the same, with Drake May moving up a few spots to get that number 1 spot. Boy, has he had a good season. It's only his second year. No sophomore slump for him. He's looked very impressive. And, I thought he'd be good this year, but he's been playing exceptionally well. And in fact, when I was listening, I don't remember his name being mentioned as MVP, but boy, he should be at least considered. Though I do think right now, for me, so far, it's still Stafford. Stafford or Taylor. All right, and speaking of Stafford, he didn't have many yards this week, but as far as passing touchdowns, he had 2 more. He leads the NFL in passing touchdowns with 27. And he's got a big lead over Jared Goff, who has 21, as well as Dak Prescott. They both have 21. 6 touchdown lead for Stafford, and he's already had his bye week, and he still has the lead with 27. So Drake May is 4th with 20. Those are your top 4 players with 20 or more. Josh Allen jumped up into number 8 spot with 18. That's because he had 3 passing touchdowns along with 3 rushing touchdowns in his game against the Buccaneers. So he's now jumped into the top 10 with 18. Still a long way for Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford's had several games with at least 3 touchdown passes or more. Now, looking at interceptions, this continues to be a battle between Tua Tagovailoa for the Dolphins and Geno Smith for the Raiders. They both are working to stay at number 1 in this bad category. They both have 13 interceptions. Now, Tua stayed put at 13, while Geno Smith had 1 to put him at 13. Now, Sam Darnold, who wasn't even on this list, came in. There was nobody within the top 16. The top 16 had 7 or more interceptions. Sam Darnold only had 6. He threw 4 interceptions. He almost doubled his interception total. That's not good. 60% of them came in this one game. So he jumped all the way up to number 3 with 10 interceptions so far this season for the Seahawks. What a rough game for him. But like I said, sometimes you get that one game out of your system, he'll come back and gradually drop back out of the top 10. Those are your top 3 players. It's very funny to see a player, not like J.J. McCarthy jumped into the top 10, but he's got 8. But to jump into the top 10 and go all the way to number 3, that's quite an achievement, not in a good way for Sam Darnold. All right, now looking at quarterback sacks. Cam Ward continues to lead in this category. He had 3 more this past week. He now has 41. So he's well on his way. He slowed down a bit to see if he'll make it into the top 10. It's likely he'll make it in the top 10, but whether he's number 1 or not, that's a big question. Drake May has slowed down a little bit, but he's still number 2 with 36 sacks. Justin Herbert moved way up this list. He's got 35 now. He was sacked 7 times. It was a rough game for him. Geno Smith, 31. Those are your top 4 with 30 or more. And Cam Ward, like I said, with 41, leads the NFL in times being sacked. All right. That is a look at what we have for today. We'll pick up this again tomorrow, and we'll finish off the season leaders, and we'll look at the standings and the playoff picture as well. Appreciate you listening. You can find this podcast, as always, with charts and graphs and so forth on YouTube at Just the Stats NFL. You'll find the podcast there, whether you watch it or just listen to it. You'll also find this podcast on your whatever app you use, and because they all connect into Apple or Spotify, just about all of them do. So you can find me there. If you have a question, you can always email me at justastatsnfl@gmail.com. And of course, if you're whatever app or you use, or if you're on YouTube, you can always leave me a comment there as well. Appreciate that. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. And that is a wrap for this episode of Just the Stats NFL Top 10s for Wednesday. I'm out.